Good morning, everyone. Good to have you all here this morning. See the bulletins going like mad this morning. I wish I could do that.
What?
Whistle where you can read it. I can't whistle.
The glass to play.
Yeah, clean glass to clean. I could get one of those little air horn things they use at the football game. Anyway, I see the fans going this morning and everybody's hot. And you know what? You won't get any sympathy out of me because yesterday is the first day I was able to shed my coat at 9 o'clock and I never picked it up again all day. Oh, what a treat. Yeah, isn't that crazy? That is nuts. What a year. Anyway, it'll probably snow on Thursday, so enjoy it while you can. Oh, boy. But we are in 1 Kings chapter 10, just ripping through the book of 1 Kings this morning. Everybody laughs. I don't know. We're actually I am going to endeavor to at least read all the way through 1 Kings 10 this morning. So really strap on your running shoes because I want you to kind of get the whole drift of the chapter because it has some unity. It all hangs together, I think, for a reason. So it's going to be a lot of territory and you'll probably lose a lot of it along the way, but I'd like to have you get the drift. So if you're ready, chapter 10, and we'll begin at verse 1 and just read through the passage all the way to the end so you can kind of get the hang of that. Now the queen of Sheba heard about the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord. She came to test him with difficult questions. So she came to Jerusalem with a very large retinue. However you pronounce that.
Mine says it came with a great train. I didn't know there were trains back then.
Thank you. Camel train. Okay. She came with a crowd of camels carrying spices and very much gold and precious stones. And when she came to Solomon, she spoke with him about all that was in her heart. And Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was hidden from the king, which he did not explain to her. When the queen of Sheba perceived all the wisdom of Solomon, the house that he had built, the food of his table, the seating of his servants, the attendance of his waiters and their attire, his cupbearers, and his stairway by which he went up to the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. Then she said to the king, "It was a true report which I heard in my own land about your words and your wisdom. Nevertheless, I did not believe the reports until I came and my eyes had seen it. And behold, the half was not told me. You exceed in wisdom and prosperity the report which I heard. How blessed are your men, how blessed are your servants who stand before you continually and hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God who delighted in you to set you on the throne of Israel, because the Lord loved Israel forever. Therefore he made you king to do justice and righteousness." And she gave the king 120 talents of gold and a very great amount of spices and precious stones. Never again did such abundance of spices come in as that which the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. And also ships of Hiram, which brought gold from Ophir, brought in from Ophir a very great number of almond trees and precious stones. And the king made the almond trees support for the house of the Lord and for the king's house. Also lyres and harps for the singers, and almond trees have not come in again, nor have they been seen to this day. And King Solomon gave to the queen of Sheba all her desire which she requested, besides what he gave her according to his royal bounty. Then she turned and went to her own land together with her servants. Now the weight of gold which came into Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. Besides that, from the traders and the wares of the merchants of all the kings of the Arabs and the governors of the country. And King Solomon made 200 large shields of beaten gold, using 600 shekels of gold for each shield. And he made 300 shields of beaten gold, using 3 minas of gold on each shield. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory and overlaid it with refined gold. There were 6 steps to the throne and a round top to the throne at its rear, and arms on each side of the seat, and 2 lions standing beside the arms. And 12 lions were standing there on the 6 steps to the one side and on the other. Nothing like it was made for any other kingdom. And all King Solomon's drinking vessels were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None was of silver. It was not considered valuable in the days of Solomon. For the king had at sea the ships of Tarshish with the ships of Hiram. Once every 3 years the ships of Tarshish came bringing gold and silver, ivory and apes and peacocks. So King Solomon became greater than all the kings of the earth in riches and in wisdom. And all the earth was seeking the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom which God had put in his heart. And they brought every man his gift, articles of silver and gold and garments and weapons and spices and horses and mules, so much year by year. Now Solomon gathered chariots and horsemen. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, and he stationed them in the chariot cities and with the king in Jerusalem. And the king made silver as common as stones in Jerusalem, and he made cedars as plentiful as sycamore trees that are in the lowland. Also Solomon's import of horses was from Egypt, and Quay or Hugh, and the king's merchants procured them for a price. And a chariot was imported from Egypt for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150, and by the same means they exported them to all the kings of the Hittites and to the kings of Syria.
I have a question. I thought Solomon was king. I mean, was he?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then how, it's weird. And
Which verse are you looking at
hang
now?
on a second. And he took it to the king, is what I thought this is. I put my finger on it and then moved it. Oh, here it goes. 26. And Solomon gathered together chariots, horsemen, and he had 1,400, blah, blah, blah.
And with the king in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it means he had some out in the outside cities, and he had some with him
Oh, okay.
in Jerusalem. Yeah.
'Cause I thought,
So
that
they
makes
stationed
sense.
them there in Jerusalem as well as in these other places. Wow. That's a whole bunch of stuff. But I want you to get the picture of what's going on. It's kind of like a summary chapter of all the stuff that's happening in this portion of Solomon's reign, as his success is going out and his connections in commerce are growing, his connections in diplomatically with other nations. You get a glimpse of that. You see it especially with the Queen of Sheba's visit. But there were lots of others, so we're coming to check out his wisdom, to talk to him and trade and all those things. You will realize, if you think about what does he need all these chariots and all this military hardware for? Because he's not fighting any wars. And you go, why would he do that? Well, if you think about it, remember where they're located and what's going on. We got to draw the usual little scribble here, right? So there we go, and here's our coastline coming down. And we know that Egypt is down here. And over here you have, I'll call it Babylon. So at that time it was something else, but you got that is over this way with the river Euphrates, which comes way up here. And over here you have Europe, up that way. And what's happening in this little piece of real estate? Geography has a whole bunch to do with it. Out here you have water, which should be a good deal because you can sail your boat across it, right? Except in those days, naval things are small, subject to big storms and those kind of things, right? So you don't just take off across a large body of water in those days either. What do? You stay around the edges as much as you can. There's some exceptions. Of course, you got what will be Rome eventually over here as part of Europe. But so you got all this stuff, the civilizations up here, and you got them going around the edges like that. And Hiram is part of that, because Hiram's up in this area, and they've got ships sailing out of Tarshish. So you got that geography piece working for you. What's over here? Desert. So nothing there. There's lots of nothing out here, unless you like sand and rocks. It is barren, rugged country. So if you want to cross or connect with any of this, what do? You go around. You go all the way up the Tigris Euphrates until you come up here, and you pop over the top, and you come right back down through here. And there's a name for it. Everybody had to memorize for the multiple guess question in history class way back there. It's got a name. Remember the Fertile Crescent? That's the super freeway from everything over here in the Tigris Euphrates over the top and back down through this Jordan Valley and the seacoast. And if you were over in China or India, anywhere over here in Asia, how did you get back across over to here? You either came across those caravan, remember Marco Polo? Crossed the top this way, or you came through by ship and up the Fertile Crescent and around and through. What does that tell you about this insignificant little piece of real estate right here? It's important. Everything goes through there. So if you were a bandit and you wanted to make a good living, where would you hang out? Along the freeway. Why do you need chariots? Why do you need fortified cities? And when we go, if you go and make a study of all the cities he talks about fortifying and building up, whether it be Solomon or his son who follows him, and you start tracking where those cities are, they're all on major trade routes, major inlets and outlets to all the important places in this area. Almost exclusively. Some are defensive for the nation, but almost all of them are related to some kind of trade moving through the area. Over this way, there's from Jerusalem here, there's a couple of major routes, one that way and one goes up here and they go across. And there's roads that go down, well, usually they go down to Jordan and then pop back up. And then there's a major coast highway comes down through the pass. Remember we studied the one that was on the Carmel Mountains and then all the way down to there. There's also another one that comes from here and comes down this way, crosses over and comes on down through. So there's several routes, freeways, if you will, and little interties in between them. And Jerusalem's, you'd think it's out of the way, but it's in this loop that comes around. It's an important spot. So when you start thinking about that and you read about this stuff, all these things going on, there's a huge amount of trade, there's a huge amount of back and forth goings on that Solomon's in the middle of. And then you got this Queen of Sheba, which people love this one because it just sounds so exotic. This wealthy, super rich queen, and where is Sheba? Oh boy, that's a fun one to debate. There's kind of two schools of thought. I'm sure there's some others out there. The two main schools of thought are, one is it's from Ethiopia, and that down the coast of Africa on this side somewhere. And if you go watch your public TV, they'll take you down to a town there, and they claim to have the Ark and down there and all these sort of things in this monastery deal, and they claim to have evidence that this was the mythical Sheba. There are others that believe it's probably more down in the Persian, or the, I don't want to say down off of the, get myself lost here. It'd be down here in that part of the world where all the unrest is now. It comes down, makes a little point, and there's some little countries down there that seem to be scrapping with each other. That maybe she came from there, possibly because of the sailing fleet that Solomon put together with Hiram that was sailing south out of the bottom of the nation. There's a little, my map I know is getting really messy. Boy, we need to get that projector going so I can pop that up, and then I'll have to learn how to do it. Right down here is a little place where there was a port, and you can go south from there, and it appears that Hiram helped him learn to sail right there. So that may have been the contact with this Queen of Sheba who came to check him out.
So Israel didn't really export anything on their own. They were just the middleman between everybody else.
And isn't that interesting that to this day, many Jewish business people exist in this world? That's really interesting that here they were involved in business and commerce. And yeah, they do grow things. There's agriculture here. They do have some copper mines they found down in here. So there is some copper mining and stuff. But a lot of what they did was trade. And it appears that some of it was that caravans would actually come and they had marketplaces, if you will. It's like wholesale marketplaces where international trade came in, set out your wares, and then other smaller traders would come in, buy their goods, and ship them out beyond. So they may have had not only travel through, carrying things through, but they may have had secure places where you could come, set up your tent, lay out your wares, and market them to others who would then take them wherever. So, yeah, it seems to have been a lot of that kind of commerce going on. So under Solomon, silver is as common as dirt. Did you get that? It's as common as dirt. Nobody thought silver was, if it's not gold, it ain't worth having. Silver's just nothing. So part of that, what's trying to tell you is not only is Solomon doing well, the nation is doing really well. They are being very successful, lots of business going on. So this whole chapter gives you that picture of this wealth, of this big bunch of stuff going on, really important things in the world. And Sheba, I think, is kind of exemplifies maybe what was happening with a lot of nations. And for some reason, those recording the word, God chose to have them pick her out and give just a little highlight of this one individual. And it's attractive to make all kinds of things out of it, that it was his one of his love interests, and oh man, there's a whole bunch of stuff.
But she's a queen.
She's a queen.
Is that normal not to have kings but have queens?
I do not know for sure how, it's probably not common, but it was not totally uncommon apparently, because it was just, here she is, the Queen of Sheba. She's the woman in charge. We'll see Athaliah in charge later on, was a queen.
Well, a lot of African nations in particular were
Matriarchal in there.
matriarchal, that's the word.
Yeah. And of course, all you ladies know that the guys can claim patriarchal all they want, and you still have a lot more influence than people will give you credit for, right?
That was Solomon's problem, he had too much influence.
Yeah, that was way too much influence.
It never really says, but I'm assuming she went back to her, whatever country she was from.
She did.
A believer.
Uncertain.
Was she?
Uncertain.
Okay.
There are two schools that believe. Some say, oh yeah, from the final comments that are recorded from her, oh, she must have been a believer. Others say there's no evidence anywhere that she ever went and made a sacrifice at the...
Yeah, I just wonder, because it says when the Queen of Sheba perceived all the wisdom. I guess perceived is not necessarily letting it see. I don't know. What does perceived mean?
Yeah.
Really?
Did she just understand it? She could see it from herself. You know, she actually saw what she'd heard. She'd heard the rumors.
Is Sheba mentioned in any other place in the Bible?
Not that I know of. Not as far as any details about her or anything.
It's amazing that the Jewish people were to be a witness to the Gentile world, and God brought them right to
their door. Yeah. Came through. And the interesting thing is, we don't know the fallout from her visit. Did she carry anything with her that took the faith with her? Was she saved? Was she not? Some say, no, there's no evidence to prove that she was. But there's no evidence that says no either.
And her servants, her people that were with her.
Who all was there?
Who all saw. So you never know. There
Yeah.
might have been one person that carried it back.
So maybe that's why she's here as an example for us, because it does give us an insight into what was happening, because other places it says people were coming for her to hear his wisdom and to ask questions and to trade. So is she just a snapshot of what was happening all over? That this is their mission being fulfilled right in their presence, right there in front of them, is what God called them to be, the witness to the world, and he's bringing the world to them. Saying, this is the way it's designed to work, guys. And did they catch it? Is the question. Did they catch it? But let's look at some of the things of Sheba. It's really interesting. It tells us in our English that she came, once she heard about this, and all the rumors of how she might have heard, whether it's the trading, whether it's the ships that went to Ophir, was that it? Who knows? But she heard about it. She came to test him with difficult questions. And the thing is, what's difficult questions mean? And my best source for Hebrew understanding suggests that it may mean that she came to test him with riddles. And being a possible Arab-related queen, that even in those nations today, riddles are an important part of their culture. And the way that you're tested and the way that your intelligence and your problem-solving ability and everything is tested is to put things in a riddle and see if you can, it's a little story that if you figure out, it tells you a truth, that you can find a piece of wisdom in this little complicated story. And you see it in some of our literature, but in Arabian things, Jesus was tested, and he often said things in parables or in stories. Yeah. But to give somebody a riddle, how many books out there are there? I'm thinking there's a number of them that the hero had somehow, he was given this riddle, and he's got to solve this riddle. And once he solves that, why, that's the answer to, and off he goes and conquers after that. So that's really common in that culture, and they suspect that some of what the word that's used there may very well mean that she came with questions that were in form of riddles and things. They were designed to test him, not just that she didn't understand stuff and wanted to know, but she was there trying to find out if he was as bright as she heard.
Some examples I think of was Samson, He gave a riddle to those guys.
Right, yeah, okay, Philistines, see if you can figure this one out. Yeah. They want to know what the source of his strength is, and he hides it in a riddle. And once they figure it out, then he's in trouble. But
isn't it funny how we still do that? I mean, the riddle thing.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the TV show Survivor, they riddle to get to the prize.
Yeah. So there's something you got to. It's a mental puzzle that you got to figure out. So that's probably what she was doing, as well as just coming to see. And you know that she's wealthy. They give you that clue in the things that she brought with her. She's a big contingent of folks. So think long string of black Cadillacs, lots of flags flying in the wind. And this would be a camel train. When they came into town, everybody would have been going, whoa! And you think of the movies, where the queen's coming in and they got her in her shaded thing and the whole 9 yards and all the servants with the fans. Boy, this would have been a big deal. And spices is an interesting one. It mentions that she came and gave a gift of spices like they've never seen since. So valuable, valuable stuff. Sometimes more valuable than gold itself were these spices. So this gal had connections. And she spoke all that was in her heart. And the interesting thing is, because what God had gifted him with, he answers all the questions. He gets all the riddles. He answers any other questions she might have had. So there was nothing hidden, and here's where I think adds to the strength of the riddle ideas. There's nothing hidden that he couldn't figure out and explain to her. There's nothing hidden. That he was able to answer it all. And then she's blown away by all the pageantry, by the quality of clothing his servants had, the table that he spread, the food that was there, the whole 9 yards. It said, took her breath away. There was no spirit in her. My translation said, she is floored that it's the way, I mean, it's just not heard of. So we have this fabulous spread that she puts on, she's able to see. And then her words, it's true. In fact, I had not been told half of it. I didn't believe the report. I've seen it in verse 7, and it was not half. You exceed in wisdom and prosperity, what I heard. And then she pronounces this little interesting blessing. How blessed are your men. How blessed are your servants who stand before you continually to hear your wisdom. Oh, did you get that? She is impressed not just with the stuff. She's saying, your servants get to stand here and listen to wisdom. That's what impressed her more than the stuff. That they get to hear that wisdom. And then this is the thing Dana brought up. Blessed be the Lord your God who delighted in you to set you on the throne of Israel. Because the Lord loved Israel forever. Therefore he made you king to do justice and righteousness. And there's the question. Did she understand from the point of being a believer? Or did she just understand from what Solomon told her about why he was there and why he was, did he give a testimony to why he was blessed, why all this is here? And she's repeating that back, saying, well, your God is really good. That's what we don't know. Is she just recognizing this God of yours that made you king, you are most blessed? Some say there's indications there that she really did understand and know the God at that point. And there's some that say, I'm not sure. I'm not certain about that. What I am certain about is there was a huge shot across his bow right there. Did you catch it? God just came in from an unexpected source and said, Solomon, do you know why this is all here? It's all here because your God has made you king. He delighted in you. He set you on the throne. Why do I think that that was a shot across his bow to get his attention? Because we're almost out of time. I'll leave you hanging till next week, right? Oh.
But Ron, with all this, she also saw all the wives. And if she understood what that was all about, she also could have seen those wives better.
I don't know. She would have known about the wives and she would have seen that, but it was so common among all the kings of the era that was, in fact, it could very well be that's a source of bragging rights and your power and your influence, especially influence. Because you got to remember, this harem, part of it is the old sin nature and, the guy having lots of wives because he wants lots of gorgeous women around. Part of it is that. The bigger part of it is all those wives represent something. Where do they come from?
Foreign countries.
Foreign countries. In fact,
Peace treaties.
Peace treaties, connections. I'm impressive because Joe Schmo over here in this neighboring country that's so powerful, his daughter, or maybe a couple of them, are in my harem. That is like this huge victory. I've got this negotiated peace treaty, this deal about trade, whatever. And the bigger your harem, the more connections you have, the more influence, the more power, the more elevated you are in everyone's eyes. So I don't think that seeing that harem would have done anything more than impress her with his connections.
Power.
Yeah.
It seems to me that she doesn't really believe that there is just one God. She says your God, not our
Good
God.
point. Yeah, it's not the God, it's your God. So there's,
among many.
yeah,
that
so
everybody around.
that's what folks will point to when they say, I'm not so sure she was saved.
Yeah, back to your original question. I believe that this shot came from God because here you have this woman, this queen, coming and telling him how powerful and full of wisdom and bringing him all this gold and, doing, I think he did it to humble him, that you didn't do anything for this. It was from me.
Yeah, you need to see
He's
that.
already on the downhill slide because of all of his wives,
Yep.
because of going to Egypt and buying horses and chariots when they were commanded never to go back to Egypt.
Thank you.
And not to have too many horses either.
Yeah, not to have all the horses, but they're,
Deuteronomy 17 says, no horse, don't multiply
Yeah.
horses from Egypt, and
multiplied wives, yeah.
don't do it. So, right there, yeah,
Why don't you finish your sentence?
no, jump
Better
in,
in.
jump in.
Well, on the shot across the bow thing, you know, thinking of what he wrote in Ecclesiastes, he said, look, I didn't turn anything aside. I gave myself to pleasure, this is Ecclesiastes 2. And enjoy yourself, he said. Whatever it is to stimulate your body with wine or whatever, you go for it. And I enlarge my work, I build houses, parks, garden, ponds, waters for myself, he always says. Bought slave, collected for myself silver and gold. And all that my eyes desired, I did not refuse them. So he was given over to worldliness, which is adultery,
Yeah.
and against God. And God is saying, wait a minute, you've totally misread where all this stuff came from. That's the shot across the bow to straighten out his worldliness.
Yeah. And he said, because you can go, that's the neat thing about, you know, Ecclesiastes is a fascinating book, but Ecclesiastes in the middle of 1 Kings is absolutely your key insight to understand what's going on in this piece of real estate in the heart of that king right there at this time. I think this is written right in the middle of all this stuff. And what you see is a king who is on, as you said, on the downhill slide. And he's looking at all this stuff, and I'm building all this stuff, and I'm doing all this thing. And right in the middle of it, the Queen of the Sheba comes in and says, wow, Solomon, your God is really big. And Solomon should have stopped dead in his tracks and went, whoa, wait a minute. It's not about doing all this stuff because it makes me feel good, because now I'm important. You know, that's right. God gave me that.
Either that or he's sitting there going, yeah, God loves me because I'm so
wonderful.
I find it interesting, we don't hear anything about Solomon's family. You know,
Not a peep.
We know the one who followed him, but, you know, it's undoubtedly he must have had a large family.
A ton of them.
Why don't we ever hear, you know, read about him?
Yeah.
David.
Yeah, there's only one that we ever hear about, and you wonder.
Very interesting, I think.
And that one, I know he was thinking about it, because if you read in Ecclesiastes a little further over, he says one of the great evils, one of the great awful things about life, and you work and you slave and you put all this stuff together, and what happens to it?
Somebody else uses it.
Gets handed off to somebody else, and you have no idea if they're going to appreciate it, take care of it, do justice by you with it, or you just hand it to a fool and he throws it away.
For there is no remembrance of the wise more than forever.
Yeah, and fools and wise people both end up dead and forgotten. But he says you work and you slave, and for what? You hand it off, and it's gone. And he begins to, I think that's down at the end, and he's looking at Rehoboam coming up. He's written Proverbs somewhere along the line, hoping to prepare Rehoboam. And I struggle a little bit to think, did he write that in hopeful anticipation early in Rehoboam's life that I put these things down and he'll get them? Did he write them as he began to see Rehoboam going off with the wrong crowd in hopes he would turn him around? I almost tend to think maybe the former. I used to think the latter. But as you get later in Rehoboam's life, Ecclesiastes is where Solomon was, and it's interesting. You know, would Solomon have been able to pull that wisdom together, put those things down in Proverbs and write them to his son and write them out there with his heart in them and not get turned around himself? So now I'm starting to lean more towards saying, I think those were early on put down when Solomon's still walking with his God and saying, okay, I got to prepare my son. And then somewhere along the way, he's off now worshiping, and we'll see that in the next chapter. He's off on the high place somewhere on the Mount of Offense at an idol worship site. And you got to go, oh my gosh, that's not the guy that wrote Proverbs. So this is a little insight, I think, a little glimpse into this guy Solomon and what's happening in the country. And I hate to tell you this, but there's a big so what in there. Because in my humble opinion, that is dead ringer. We are the most affluent, influential nation in this world today. I know everybody's saying it's China, and China's a significant power economically coming up, and all that sort of thing, but when you look at their country and the situation their people live in and everything, there's a ton of desperate poverty in China that they build.
I just read in the paper, they're at least, 10 to 15 years away from ever catching us.
Yeah.
By that,
So where's the wealth
now? So.
Yeah, where's the wealth? Where's the wisdom? Where's all the stuff in the world today that would look like that?
Do you know about how many years all the wealth and prosperity was going on?
I would guess it was probably 20, 30 years.
Oh,
Solomon was there
because I
for 40.
thinking if it was 200, it would really go, ooh.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, he's in the middle of, David's bringing peace to the land. Solomon takes over. They have a real quick, it's not a curve that looks like this. It's one that looks like that.
Seems to me that, I may be wrong, but it seems like the Jewish people later always look back to the days of David, back to the days of David, back to the days of David, but I don't hear much about during Solomon's time. To talk about Solomon's temple, you don't hear much about that time period as being their best.
Yeah.
The best time period, they say, was David's reign.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why.
From a spiritual standpoint, in spite of David's sin, that was their high point. From a physical wealth, influence, affluence standpoint, it's Solomon. But definitely, God doesn't judge us by that. So what's the problem with that? Okay, we've been blessed. God's given us all these blessings and everything. Isn't that a great thing?
But you sort of take it for granted.
The problem is, what do you do with it? And are we an Ecclesiastes group, or are we early days of Solomon group that says, God, you are so great that you blessed us with all this? Or are we looking over at the stuff and going, what's really important in the world is success and fame and fortune and all those things. What drives us as Americans, and especially as American Christians? Yeah. All you have to do is look at the news, and what was the biggest news here a while back? It trumped almost everything, including all the murders, all the political intrigue, and everything else. What drove the news media for almost a week?
We won the lottery.
Lottery. Why is that such a big deal? It's a game. And most people lose.
People buy tickets and have no money.
Yeah. It is everybody's dream is if I get rich, that's the answer.
I'm really happy if the more money I have, the happier I'm
Then it's going to be. And it trumps everything. It trumps being here, doesn't it?
I asked this man from Africa why there were so many more Grace Brethren churches in Africa than here,
Yeah.
and I'll never forget. He said, in Africa, we're poor and humble, and America will be rich and proud.
And go, man, from when you get over there looking back, and it's a different world. Huge shot across our bow this morning for all of us, because we're stuck in it. I find myself stuck in it, looking at the wrong thing and not even realizing that I'm looking at it wrong because I'm so saturated with what the world says. It is just so difficult to, that's where real wisdom is when you can identify that and go, whoa, that's not what I want to do. Here's where God's calling me to be. Here's what's valuable. Here's what's important. And it's just so easy to get off track. And so I guess what I'm telling you, not that, we're all bad people because we live in this place. It's that we need to remember we live in this place, and we need to be checking ourselves all the time and saying, wow, was that a shot across our bow, God? Was there something I should have been paying attention to? Do I need to reevaluate my life in a different way than what I have been?
I know the recurrent theme there in Ecclesiastes 2, Solomon was saying, I did this for myself, I did this for myself. He saw his wealth for himself. And if you want to put down what the difference for us is, whether we see this blessing as a platform to launch out for others or whether we see it for ourselves.
Yeah.
And pretty much it's ourselves.
Yeah.
It's where we're going wrong.
Yeah. So to have it, it's not wrong. It's what you do with it.
Yeah.
And how you look at it.
Yeah.
So it's all key is how do you evaluate, what are your plans with it? So challenging questions, no easy answers, but something that each one of us individually, that's the other thing. I can't stand up and say, okay, you ought to do this and you should do that, and each one of us has to look at ourselves, and that's what God, I think, was asking Solomon to do with the Queen of Sheba, was to say, wait a minute, Solomon, think about this. You're writing that it's all vanity and striving after wind. It's all emptiness. It didn't bring you satisfaction. Well, hello, Solomon. Here's a lady that can tell you what it's all about. And we don't even know if she was a believer. Anyway, let's close. Father, we thank you for our time together this morning, for this interesting little passage, this vignette into the life of Solomon and the just amazing world that they lived within, and the wealth that was there that you gave to that nation. And Father, just a real wake-up call for those of us who find ourselves in a very similar wealthy, well-to-do country with the same word in front of us, and even more so than what Solomon had in his day. And we pray, Father, that you would give us ears to hear your call, that when you send those to us like that Queen of Sheba, that fire a shot across our bow about what is the source of our success, of our wealth, and what should be the source of our happiness. Father, would you bring us up short and help us to see you and not be caught up with the world's claims, that we might glorify you, that we might have our greatest joy where it really is, not in emptiness and futility of striving for things, but in knowing you. We just thank you, Father, for our time together this morning. In Jesus' name.